I get kind of offended whenever anyone else's name is Peyton, to be honest, because I was just the only one growing up that I knew. And then like when I was in high school, there started to be others floating around, and I'm just like, this is so fucked up. So messed up. I hate this. This is mine.
Now, anytime that you meet somebody who has your name, you have to immediately get a little bit of a rivalry with them, because if it comes down to it, I will kill the other Aubrey.
Yes.
This happened to me recently, though. I met another director named Mackenna, and she was like low-key kind of weird about it. I was like, oh, that's so funny. We had the same name. And she was like, yeah, that's interesting. And I was like, oh, this girl hates me because we share a name. And I felt like, okay.
It's like somebody's gonna have to change. It's like if you meet somebody with your name, you have to immediately expect that they are going to take on a nickname. And if they try to put it onto you, it's not gonna happen. I always know that somebody is trying to be too familiar with me when they hit me with the ob. Nobody in my life calls me ob except for person who is trying to be too familiar with me who doesn't know me like that. If I meet somebody like that, they'll go, hey, Ob, don't do that.
Ew.
I immediately clocked. You are not somebody who I want to be close with.
I think I've called you Obs before, but I don't think I've ever called you Ob.
Sometimes people hit me with the Obs too, and I'm like, I don't know about that either.
It's not you. I'm gonna start calling you Bree exclusively.
I went through a phase when I was going to be starting high school where that summer I had everyone call me Bree, and then when I started high school, by the time they got to my name in the roll call, there were already 3 Brees in the class. So I was like, all right, that 2 months of my life, forgotten forever. Speaking of rebranding, welcome to Informed Attraction, hosted by Dr. Aubrey Hoffer.
I'm Mackenna Goodrich.
And we have no superlatives today because it's fucking serious.
Oh, it's serious.
We're being serious. We're being serious now.
Oh, okay, we're a serious podcast now. And we are joined today by a guest, Peyton Flake, who is a filmmaker, a writer, a director, an actor, who is also from ye olde Arizona. And unlike me and Aubrey, actually did grow up Mormon. And so we wanted to bring someone on with a little bit more perspective than either of us, just being around Mormons growing up, to talk about all of the fun little pieces of media we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the podcast, Peyton.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, it's so flattering to be spoken to and described in that way.
I watched Peyton. We started talking about Peyton coming on literally yesterday because Peyton sent me a short film she made about Peyton, will you describe what Missionary is about? Because I did watch it, but I just feel like it should come from you.
It's wonderful.
Oh, did you both watch it? Oh dear. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. Okay, so it's like it's a Mormon sex comedy is how I describe it, about a couple at BYU who are engaged but are supposed to be married in 3 months and are kind of having a difficult time waiting that long, and so they find some creative ways to get around that. Yeah, I think that's a pretty succinct. I don't want to spoil anything. There's some twists and turns.
Yeah, we'll link it in the episode description /notes. But it was a delight, and all of those boys you had in it were such characters.
It was so funny because one of them was a coworker. One of them was one of my coworkers, and 2 others were 2 boys I met doing improv here in New York. We filmed it here, but it's like set in Provo.
Yeah,
which I actually did not go to BYU, but I know a lot of people who did, so I had some to pull from. And yeah, I just was like, you guys look Mormon. You guys should come be in this. And nobody else was LDS at all who was involved. So it was a lot of me like explaining things because a lot of them were East Coasters and they just like don't have, the frame of reference. So there would be like when we were shooting, when I would literally have to like pause and like explain something to the entire crew of like, okay, this is what this means. This is what this means. But yeah, everyone was super game, and those boys were so great. And I took one of them to church. We went, Jeremy, who's like plays, because I'm also acting and I'm like the girl. and the guy who played my partner, I was like, we should go to like the Ward in Brooklyn just to check it out. But honestly, the vibes of church here in New York is so different from Gilbert. It's so different. It was kind of like, I totally prepared him for something way different than we ended up experiencing, which was really interesting.
What were the differences?
It was so much more casual here. Like, I was telling him, I was like, we need to dress up. Like, you need to be in a suit, basically. Can wear a long sleeve white shirt if you want, but like, and you need to have a tie, you need to have trousers, black shoes, all that stuff, because that is the way, you can't wear a short sleeve shirt, basically. You can't wear like a button up short sleeve. It has to be a long sleeve. It's very specific with him because that's how it is in Arizona. That's how, my dad dressed going to church growing up. And then we showed up and people were in t-shirts. I was like, what on earth? And then I felt really bad because it was like, I don't think it was summer, but it was like, it would have been nicer to wear a short sleeve for sure. Him. And then I felt like, I was like, oh.
So in our episode before this, we basically did a Mormonism 101 primer to like, what are some of the beliefs of Mormonism? What is some of the history of the church? And what I wanted to talk about today was the cultural, like, basically the pop culture relevance of Mormons and how that has changed over time. And essentially what we're going to do is just kind of briefly talk through some pieces of media that I think are really indicative of the progression of like the LDS church trying to rebrand Mormons in pop culture. Because I think historically, even when I was quite young, there was a cultural image of Mormons as being like clean and well dressed, but like kind of weird. And I think that there has been a shift over time to try to like brand Mormons as we're just like you guys. And I think that is really indicative with Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which we're going to talk about last. But I think the one thing that I'd like to go through first is your perspective, Peyton, as somebody who grew up in the church. Like, kind of talk me through, like, over the course of your lifespan, what have you seen as the pop culture image of Mormons, and what have been some of the watershed moments in that image maybe changing or shifting a little bit?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because growing up in Gilbert, it was such like an insulated, heavily Mormon community that it kind of just felt like I kind of describe my high school experience almost as like feeling like I'm in a police state because like everyone I went to church with obviously was Mormon. Most of my neighbors were Mormon, and then I went to school and I didn't go to the school I was supposed to go to, so I wasn't. Like I was supposed to be sectioned for a different school, but we preferred to go to Perry. And so then it was an entirely new group of people who I didn't know from church or from, my previous schools, and they still were all Mormon. So it was just like, oh my gosh, this is kind of almost like, but you also know that's not like what the world in general looks like because of media, basically. Mm-hmm. But it feels like this is like what this world looks like. So it makes it almost hard to like really envision what a life outside of it really could be. And then you would meet someone every once in a while, like someone at school, sometimes someone who like had just transferred in or like transferred to Gilbert, and they would have like a really, really negative opinion of like the LDS and of Mormons, and would say, like a new friend or something would say something to me of like, oh yeah, well, you guys believe you are gods or something like that. Something that like didn't quite like, I think in retrospect, I know where that like thought or statement was coming from. But at the time it was like, oh, like they really don't like me because of, my religion, which also kind of contributes to the insulation. And a lot of Mormons are not really allowed to watch media at all, or like it's very, very sheltered. I didn't see a rated R movie until I went to college. And I went to film school. So that was interesting. Because it was like one of the first ones I saw. There's a class at Arizona State where I went called Sex and Violence in Film. And so like the first movie they ever showed us was actually South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut.
Oh my God.
What a start.
Day one, first, like, and I think I'd seen one rated R movie other than that, but it was that movie about improv, Don't Think Twice, which like really should not be rated R, as two F words in it. And then it was like that, South Park. And then week 2, it was Boogie Nights. And I was like,
God.
Whoa. This is crazy. Yeah. But anyways, going back, so like I wasn't really exposed to a lot of the stuff that was being watched, but my mom is actually a convert. So she would kind of go out. So like my parents, they watched Big Love when it was on HBO, which I think that was probably the biggest watershed moment in terms of like the current, because I think before like Big Love happened, which I think was probably around like 2007, 2008, I think the idea, the image a lot of people had of Mormonism was like Brigham Young, Joseph Smith, polygamy. Like that was the sort of thing when I was really young. If someone said, like, if I said, oh, I'm Mormon to someone, it'd be like, oh, so how many moms do you have? That was kind of the idea of it. And then when Big Love came out, I think, you know, the polygamy, you know, obviously references didn't really stop, but I think people started to get, because that show is very, I don't know if you guys have ever seen an episode of that show. It's actually really good. I just watched it for the first time recently, but it's about like a guy who's doing polygamy in Utah, but it's very specific about the differences between the FLDS, like the fundamentalists, the Warren Jeffs of it all, and the current church, because him and his wife are excommunicated in the show by the actual LDS church. They're fictional, because they are kind of living in a middle ground between the FLDS and the LDS. So that I think brought a little bit more of like I think that brought some more interest. And then another big cultural shift was Book of Mormon, the musical, obviously. Like that was just huge, huge, huge. It was huge at Perry. It was huge at my high school. And I was a theater kid.
I have such a distinct memory of the boys at Perry High School performing Hello at like one of our Arizona theater competitions and being like, number one, how do they have that many boys? Number two, this is Perry High School. All these boys are actually Mormon.
Actually, you know what's really interesting is, so our theater department at Perry was really a very less Mormon heavy space. I think
really?
3. Yeah. So I think of all those boys who did that production. It's so funny that we're talking about this on that. I think only one. I think only one of those boys was actually Mormon.
Lore reveal.
Oh no, maybe 2. I think maybe 2. There was one guy who was kind of waffling in and out, and then there was another guy who was, and I believe still is, LDS. And the rest of them were kind of, because Book of Mormon was huge in our theater department specifically, I think because it was a lot of kids who were not Mormon who were surrounded by Mormons.
Yeah.
They were just like awesome. And me and a few other girls, I don't remember if we were told to say this, but like we would, when people brought it up to us, we were either coached or we came up with it ourselves. I can't remember. But if someone asked us our opinion, we would be like, well, we like the book better.
Yeah. Yep.
So that was our go-to response. But I did like Hello. I didn't see it until like last year. I didn't see Book of Mormon the musical until last year. But my mom went out and saw it. My mom traveled to LA to see it and she didn't like it. But of course she was like, it was kind of like, what are you going to expect? She was like, so raunchy. They were so disrespectful to Christ. I was like, yeah.
She's like, I was not expecting that.
Even at the time, I was like, I don't know what you expected.
Yeah. It's the South Park guys.
Yeah. So yeah, Book of Mormon was another big shift. And then that was also around the time of the Mormon moment. So like when Romney was running, there were a bunch of articles, and also the church at the time took out this huge, like multi-million-dollar media campaign, the I'm a Mormon campaign. I don't remember if you guys remember that happening, because that was also super big in Gilbert.
Talk a little bit about that for people who might not know like what that movement was.
Yeah. So it was around the time the Book of Mormon, the musical, came out, and around the time Mitt Romney was running for president. And I think the Mormon Church decided that they kind of needed a little bit of a rebrand, and they needed to make sure that people really knew that Mormons were something different than like polygamists, that we weren't polygamists for starters, and that you could be like kind of an average Joe and you could do. So they like enlisted basically every famous Mormon celebrity. Like I remember there was an Olympic swimmer who was involved, Alex Boye, who is this like crazy like Mormon musical artist who's now writing, this is my favorite account on Instagram. He's writing like Hamilton for Joseph Smith.
Oh my god. Oh yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, this guy.
Yes, you know what I'm talking about. And
yes.
He's African. He's British African. So he was like a really great face for the church because he's not white. And they like blasted him on top of everything. He's gone viral on YouTube a few times because he did like
the
this
Mormon
African
church straight up just being like, I'm not racist, I have a black friend.
It really was. It really was. Yeah, so he's writing Hamilton. He's like writing a rap musical about Joseph Smith now, which is like, I'm so excited. I have never been more excited for anything in my life.
Wow.
And so anyways, yeah, they put like a ton of money into this campaign, like millions and millions of dollars to like basically like they did Times Square ads, they had subway stuff here in the city, they had TV ads, they had YouTube shorts where it'd just be like talking about a person in their life and how the church has helped their life, and that they'd been at the end they'd be like, I'm blah 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 and I'm a Mormon.
Yep.
Which is so funny in retrospect because the prophet who kind of, you know, instituted this movement, Thomas S. Monson, he died a few years later, and the guy who came in to replace him, Russell Nelson, has never liked that the church calls themselves Mormons, and he immediately put in a thing saying we are no longer called Mormons. We are called members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, said that using the term Mormon was like a win for Satan. And yeah, which is so funny because they literally just spent so much money to rebrand the name Mormon. Yeah. And then things kind of after that movement kind of, he came in, he made a lot of unpopular decisions. I think this was actually kind of, this is like Monson / Nelson. This like they for a while they said that people who had gay parents could not be baptized into the church unless they like basically disowned their parents or like, you know, said like, I don't approve of their relationship, even as adults, even as kids. And yeah, so a lot of people left the church over that. And then they rolled back that policy. And then I think kind of things, they kind of went back into, you know, relative obscurity for a while. And then the past few years, Mormon Wives has definitely brought back a ton of interest. It's really like recontextualized the way a lot of people see the church. And the trad wife movement has also really, really brought back, because a lot of those trad wives are Mormon, a lot of them. And yeah, and that brings us back to now, basically.
So I love this timeline. We're going to be talking about various pieces of media that are either explicitly Mormon or Mormon coded. We're not going to be talking as much about Big Love, mainly because I haven't seen it and I didn't have time to watch the entire show Big Love prior to filming this episode. Fuck me, I guess. Eventually, though, it does seem like a really cool show. So if anyone is ever interested in Mackenna and I actually watching all of Big Love and then doing an episode or a series about Big Love specifically, send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com and we will definitely consider doing it because it has cool actors who I'm really into and it's one that I've always wanted to watch. So we're going to talk through 5 different pieces of media today and just doing sort of rapid fire, like hot takes, how they are related to the Mormon church and like the Mormonism of it all. So we're going to go through first Twilight, then Sister Wives, then the Book of Mormon musical, Dancing with the Stars, and then Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And the idea for that is basically tracking us through various depictions of like Mormons and Mormon coded things throughout, for the most part, my lifespan. So, starting with Twilight, this is like news to some people who are not really in the know, but Stephenie Meyer is Mormon, and her faith has been widely discussed in relation to the themes of the Twilight series. And, you know, I'm not trying to say that like Twilight is Mormon media because Stephenie Meyer is Mormon, but like there are things, right? Like there are themes around like abstinence, sexual restraint, marriage as the appropriate context for sex, eternal love, like temptation, body transformation. All of these things really lend themselves to a Mormon interpretation. So there's a great person on Instagram who has done all of these really fun videos about like the ways in which Twilight has these very like Mormon moments. My favorite is how Carlisle Cullen canonically looks, I think, just like Joseph Smith, right? Was that the one that I sent you, Mackenna?
Yes, that is the fun. Yes.
Yeah. Objectively hilarious.
Yeah.
So I think my question is like, did Twilight make like Mormon coded values more culturally palatable by removing the religious context from it? So like, is it that like Twilight was sort of a watershed moment in like, you know, eking in some Mormon values into mainstream culture by presenting them through this lens of like sexy vampire rather than like, I am telling you a religious story, because also like Mormon fiction is a whole thing.
Right. Well, it's so funny. I was just reading this morning this like Instagram scroll from someone who I'm going on a crazy rabbit hole here, who used to write "I was sold to One Direction" fan fiction.
Classic.
And
awesome. Good.
Yep, good. And basically what she was talking about, that like there was this whole thing of like young women writing these stories on Wattpad that were very based in like ideas of like male violence, of like, I was sold to the mob, I was kidnapped by the cult, like all of this stuff. And I think what's really interesting about that is I feel like a lot of that actually came out of like I was a Twilight fan fiction reader, and that was very prevalent in like Twilight fan fiction. And so I think it's really interesting to think about the ways in which like Twilight was such this huge cultural moment, and the relationship depicted in it between Edward and Bella specifically is like so toxic and fucked up the whole time. And like they get married as soon as they turn 18, and then they immediately have sex and they immediately have a baby. And so I think it was just in this really interesting cultural moment where there was so much like weird trad stuff happening in literature, and it was sort of the inception of that. And I think that like obviously there is a connection to Stephenie Meyer and her values in that depiction. And so it was just a really interesting cultural moment of like, hey, here's this piece of media that like everyone is reading, and it's so like traditional in the way that this relationship is progressing, except for the fact that he's a vampire.
Right. Like, because when you take away the supernatural elements of it, you get kind of the classic story of like, wow, we met in high school and we had this pull toward each other that felt really divine and inevitable. And so as soon as we were able to, we got married and started our family.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. It's really, I don't know. It was a really fascinating time, I think, in general. And it was interesting, I think, also growing up in Arizona when Twilight was so big, because like, you know, I mean, you knew people who knew Stephenie Meyer. And so it was just this like very, I think, specific place and specific moment at the time. And so much of it came from her own like feelings and opinions, and like it was such this like huge cultural moment that I honestly don't totally think we've seen in the same way again with like a romance book. I mean, I guess a little bit of Court of the what is it, a Court of Thorn and Flowers, the thing that's happening right now, the Sarah J. Maas books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I would say is the closest thing to like what Twilight was.
Right. Well, I feel like ACOTAR is like for the girls who liked Twilight when they were teenagers, because it just seems like ACOTAR, most of the people who I know who are big fans of it are closer to my age rather than teen girls being into it, you know?
Right, totally.
I feel like the Mormonism aspect, like the lack of sex of Twilight almost helped it become such a cultural phenomenon, mostly because it made it more acceptable to have like a McDonald's promotion.
Right.
In a way that like a lot of other romances, because you can read, I've actually only read the first Twilight book, but you can read, I think it's like the first 3, they don't have sex until Breaking Dawn. So it's like a very chaste romance, and that like honestly just opened it up for more marketing opportunities.
Right. And then it's through marriage that sex opens up, and like marriage is kind of sexy in that way, right? Whereas I think other like romance novels, it is about like it is about like the sexual tension of it all. And I think Twilight is similar, where there's a lot of sexual tension, but it's also this thing of like the hottest guy you've ever seen desperately wants you, but he also like respects you so much that he's gonna just wait until you're ready. And that is just you know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that fantasy. Like, I think that that's like good boundary setting and that's like fine modeling, but I do think that it's very interesting to me that girls of an entire generation were really buying into this as the ideal romance, and it's coming from a writer who's immersed in a church where there are these values around marriage and a lot of these norms around like getting married quite young.
Yeah. And I think another thing that like I know people always bring up when they talk about like the connection between Twilight and the LDS and Mormons is like the notion of this like eternal family thing that you have with the Cullens, because like obviously they are an eternal family because they are vampires. And so I feel like that's normally the thing that I feel like I always hear people like outside of just like the Bella and Edward relationship, like this notion of like an eternal family, I feel like is the thing that like people have brought up the most in like connecting the two. So it's like there's the absence and purity part of it all, obviously. But then there's also this notion of the eternal family that pops up in it as well.
Yeah, and that's really fascinating when you think about Twilight through the lens of like conversion, right? Because Bella's coming from a family environment where like I really don't know the lore of Twilight super well, but I'm pretty sure it's like her mom gets married to a new guy who like it doesn't fuck with her, so she goes to live with her single dad, and then you know she meets Edward and the Cullens and just really falls in love with this family who has this tight-knit bond to each other, and then becomes part of that family and kind of like leaves behind those who were, you know, her original family.
Yeah. I hadn't even actually, because I read it for the first time I think a year or two ago, because I wasn't allowed to read it when I was a kid. My mom was like, again, very, very sheltered, but my mom loved it. My mom loved Twilight, which I have. She knew Stephanie. That's a whole. I might get into that later.
No, feel free.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say. So Stephanie was in my parents' ward when I was about the time I was being born, before she moved to Forks, because Stephanie also moved from Phoenix to Forks, which is why Bella moves from Phoenix to Forks at the beginning of the first Twilight. And my mom like hated Stephanie. Hated her. And like I asked her why in retrospect. And honestly, I think my mom is very like appearance oriented, which is very LDS of her. But she was like, because I'm like, why didn't you like Stephanie? And she's like, because she was weird. She was weird and goth and dark and awkward. And I was like, okay, you don't sound like the hero in this story. But then Stephanie moved to Forks and, you know, wrote Twilight. And the funniest thing is my mom became like a huge Twilight super fan.
Oh my God.
And like has traveled to Forks with her friends, like has stayed, like went and did like all the tours in Forks, went to midnight premieres, and she still doesn't like Stephanie. She's still like, she's stuck to her gun. She's like, I don't like her as a person, but Twilight is so good. So anyways, that's just my mom's thing. But something that struck me when I read the book for the first time, I was like, Edward is like the perfect Mormon man, which I think is really interesting because he's so into her. He's so into Bella. He's so attracted to her. And she's kind of, at least in the first book, she's kind of willing to, you know, I think, does she say she wants to have sex with him in the first book? Something like that. Like
yes, I think she is way more really, like, we should have sex. And he's like, no.
Yes, and he's like but he's so into her, but he has such like strong values, and he adheres so closely to his own values that prevents him, which is like the perfect, because I think a lot of when you're a young Mormon girl, you're kind of taught that it's your job almost to keep boys from straying. Like that's why you have to dress modestly. That's why you have to be careful not to go on one-on-one dates until you're almost getting ready to get married. Like it's your responsibility as a woman to prevent boys from straying. And Edward is a boy who is almost like fanatically devoted to his own values and his own like, we're not having sex before marriage, to the point where Bella can kind of let loose a little bit and doesn't have to worry about that with him. And that is such an LDS girl fantasy.
Yeah.
Peyton, if you're comfortable talking about it, can you talk a little bit about what dating as like an LDS girl was like?
Yeah. For me, to be honest, it was almost non-existent. Just because it was so, and my parents were extremely, extremely strict.
Yeah.
And I was also, you know, I kind of realized from a young age that I was queer, and I was like, you know, having a difficult time managing that with expectation of like, you know, boys, and was also not really, I personally wasn't really interested in a lot of the Mormon boys that I knew, since we were in such a conservative area. And I grew up, my mom is liberal, my dad's a Republican. And so I kind of always sided with her. So I didn't have like a come to Jesus later in life, like a lot of LDS kids who, you know, now work in the arts or live in New York. You know, I never switched sides. I was always knew, like always siding with the Democrats or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so kind of felt alienated from a lot of the boys that I knew growing up, just because it was such like this, ideological difference. But from what I, heard and stuff, like things were pretty strict until 16. Like I remember my first date technical, in which was like to a dance, to like a Sadie Hawkins dance, was like the night before I turned 16. It was like, so I was technically 15, and my dad almost tried to stop me from going. He's like, well, you're not 16 yet. And I'm like, but I'm going to be 16 at midnight. Like that is like it was that. And that was like from family to family, but it was like letter of the law strict in my house. And I knew a lot of people's families were like that. But then I think, I'm trying to think if I have like any sort of, people got married really young. A lot of people got married really young. And like my closest friend got married at 19. That was kind of a big thing, I think, especially in the Gilbert Queen Creek area, is like girls would go to BYU, Idaho for, 6 months. They'd go to BYU I do, as they sometimes call it. And then they would come back and they'd be married. And what I think honestly ended up being a really interesting result that is specifically to our generation is almost everyone I know who did that is now divorced.
Yep, same.
And that is very conducive to our generation specifically, because my parents' generation did not really get divorced. And I wonder if like our generation is more divorced of LDS kids because like there's more access to therapy and like it's a little less judged now to go to marriage counseling or therapy or things like that, or because like people can't financially have kids right away the way they used to.
Right. And then you're not kind of trapped into marriage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the dating, LDS dating is really interesting because it is so just like marriage oriented. You're like, You're not there to have fun. You're not there to have a good time. You're there with one goal, and it is to get hitched. And yeah, that's how so I kind of avoided it for that reason when I was younger, because I just knew that wasn't on the cards for me quite yet.
That was one of the things that's so funny, like right now, because I feel like now at like 28, I have a bunch of friends who are getting engaged again, but it's like I've already sort of been through this. Like I had all these friends get married when I was 18, 19, 20, and then now the majority of them are divorced, and some of them are remarried. Like I have some friends who have gotten divorced and remarried in the time that like I am now 28 years old. But then now I have all of these friends that I met not in Arizona who are all getting engaged right now. And so it's just been this really interesting thing that I'm like, oh, I already like had this like whole swath of like people I knew who got married when I was, in college. And now all my like non-LDS friends are getting married. And it's been a very interesting just like thing of like, oh yeah, I went through this already once with everyone getting engaged and getting married, and now it's happening again.
Yeah, it's the second wave. It is interesting living in New York, where I think everyone is kind of, a lot of people are here to experience a prolonged adolescence.
Yes.
And kind of just like enjoy their youth, which I think is great, and is particularly great for me because I felt like I was, my actual teenage years were very centered around going to college and also, supposed to get married. And I kind of was just fighting that off personally. Mm-hmm. So now I get to like relax and, let my hair down a little bit and have some experience I didn't get to have when I was younger. And it's really interesting to hear stuff like, the Broad City, like I'm 27. What am I, a child bride?
Yeah.
That kind of mentality is all around me. And also I'm 27 now, which, but also my friends from back home, like one of my friends has already been married twice. I know a girl from my ward has been married 3 times and divorced 3 times. I have a good friend who has 2 kids and like, kind of, and like has a really cute little like setup, and she's not a trad wife, but she has like a little Instagram following, and is very, very cute, and is a pianist, and so she posts her music stuff, and she's great. And yeah, it's just like so interesting to see having such intense responsibilities at such a young age, like how it affects people. Like there are people I know of who had kids like 2 years ago, and you see them on Instagram, not 2 years ago, but like when they were 22, that's what I mean. Yeah. And you see them on Instagram at like 27, and it's like, that's a dad. That is a full on, they look a lot older than they are, because, they have the weight of like 2.5 kids on their shoulders. And then you walk down the street here in Bushwick, and you're like, that guy is 34 and he is like, and he is
youthful, spry.
He's
a 34-year-old boy.
He's a 34-year-old boy. you know?
Well, I mean, it's like, that's like all the guys I dated who were in their 30s last year who were like, I'm not ready to settle down and have kids yet. And I'm like, that's so fucking crazy. Like, what do you mean you're still sowing your wild oats? Your oats are running dry, my guy.
It's like, you're literally 37, Brandon.
People were talking about, did you guys see how AOC is like freezing her eggs or something like that? She's like going through that right now. People were, and I don't know if this is like legitimate. I think people are really heavily critical of her. People were like, why doesn't she just like, have kids? And she's like still waiting. And they're like, well, it's probably because she's dating, like I think her 37-year-old boyfriend is still trying to find himself.
So the next piece of media we'll talk about is TLC show Sister Wives. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I fucking love Sister Wives, guys. I was locked in to the first 15 seasons of Sister Wives.
There's 15 seasons? Oh my god.
Oh no, there's so many more. There's like 20 seasons. Oh my
Holy
god.
Cow.
I basically was locked in. So my relationship with Sister Wives is, it was sometime during college where I just started watching Sister Wives because it would be on TLC, and I just got straight up addicted to this dysfunctional ass family. And I basically have watched now from the beginning right up until the pandemic, and then I know what happens because basically post-pandemic his wives start to leave him. But anyway, the show Sister Wives follows the Brown family, who are fundamentalist Mormons. So they are not members of the mainstream LDS church. They were largely disavowed by the mainstream LDS church. There's a different post about kids in the Brown family who have tried to join the mainstream LDS church, and they are basically told, no, you are guilty by association. We will not let you in. But basically, the patriarch, I know. So the patriarch is Kody Brown, and then he has his 4 wives. There's Mary, his first wife. There's Janelle, his second wife. Janelle is a diva. We stand Janelle in this house. There's Christine, his third wife, and then Robin, his 4th wife, who is the worst person ever. Essentially, I hate Robin. All my homies hate Robin. Robin got exactly what she deserved, because essentially the way that their relationship worked is that Kody married his first 3 wives within like 3 to 5 years, and then waited like 10 years to marry Robin.
More than that. 6. It's so I watched the first season yesterday. So it's at the beginning of the show, he's been married to Mary for 20 years, married to Janelle for 17 years, married to Christine for 16 years, and then he marries Robin. Year 0 of being married to Robin is his 16th year of being married to Christine. Okay. So it's like they have fully like teenaged children by the time he marries Robin.
Yeah. So basically, the dynamic of these wives is that Robin is his hot new young wife, and Robin just triangulates the fuck out of these relationships and basically gets Kody, not through much effort, to kind of turn against the other wives. And then over time, the other wives finally get fucking tired of it, so they all leave him except for Robin. So now he's just with Robin, and the other wives have left him. But Sister Wives is quite an important show in the sense that the first few seasons of Sister Wives are really dedicated to trying to normalize the plural family structure, and they talk about how they have basically been run out of their home in Utah, and so they move somewhere else, and they do this like advocacy and like kind of like policy work to try to get plural families legally recognized. At one point, I had Mackenna watch an episode where they visit the Darger family, who were actually somewhat inspirations for the show Big Love, and I think were consultants for Big Love. And, they really just try to do this like, yeah, we're plural families and plural families are normal. And basically what you get when you watch Sister Wives is like, what does a plural family actually feel like for the women who are living inside of it? And the answer is not good. And this is not to be like a fuck polyamory or like fuck polycules or whatever, but definitely in the context of like FLDS adjacent plural family, yeah, it tends to be bad news bears for the women who are involved. Peyton, have you ever seen Sister Wives?
I have not seen Sister Wives, actually. My best guy friend is a huge fan. It is my understanding. So I obviously everyone knows they're not real Mormons, but I think it's there are a lot of offshoots. There are a lot of fundamentalist offshoots, and so the church that they are in is not the Warren Jeffs FLDS.
No.
It's like the Apostolic United or something like that.
Yeah. And they have like
a
a whole season where they try to like talk to Warren Jeff survivors, and it's really bad.
Really?
It's a really bad look, because these like women who are children of Warren Jeffs basically are like, fuck you guys, you're normalizing this and this shit's abusive. And basically the Brown family is like, we're not Warren Jeffs, sorry. Yeah. And it's just like, oh my god, TLC, this was so unethical for you to put these people in this room like this.
Yeah, so there's just like a little bit on like what they're members of, like Peyton said, the Apostolic United Brethren, which split from the mainstream LDS church when the revelation of no more polyamory showed up. And they're like one of the three big like Mormon fundamentalist groups, the biggest of which is the FLDS that Warren Jeffs is the head of. But then there are these two other like big fundamentalist sects, which are the Apostolic United Brethren, which I was a little bit familiar with because they also have a presence in Montana. And so when I was like a little kid, I was more aware of them. And then there's also this other one that's also in Utah that are the Latter-day Church of Christ, which I think is crazy style. It's too similar. It's too similar of a name. I think that the mainstream LDS church should sue the Latter-day Church of Christ. It's too similar.
Is that, did they used to be our LDS? Because that's another, oh wait, no, this is a polygamist. I'm looking them up. Yeah, and there's also the RLDS, which is the Reformed Church of Christ, which is actually what Joseph Smith's wife, Emma, because she did not agree with Brigham Young taking over the church, she thought it should be her son. And so she she broke off. And so they're not polygamous at all, because she never agreed with the polygamy, obviously. And they now have renamed themselves. They were RLDS for a long time. Now I think they're called Community of Christ is what they're called. And they're a little bit more Midwest based, but I remember like the choir teacher at Perry was actually
cool.
He was that instead of regular Mormon, which was very confusing because I think someone asked him like if they like mentioned the Book of Mormon, and he knew the Book of Mormon, but also like wasn't regular LDS, which is a very interesting kind of world to live in. Anyways.
The Community of Christ. That is, they're the second largest denomination of the Latter-day Saint movement after LDS.
Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, Sister Wives sounds interesting. I should watch a few episodes. Because my family never watched any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I think because they watched Big Love, but also I just don't think they're reality TV people. Something I think is really interesting about Sister Wives, though, it's like in the 2000s, there was a pattern of like there being like a huge prestige drama show, and then like reality would like kind of copy it. So like Big Love came before Sister Wives, and that's also how the Real Housewives franchise started, was Desperate Housewives.
Desperate Housewives, yes, 100%.
Which I think is so interesting.
Yeah. No, I never watched Sister Wives either. My mom was like, we watched TLC shows insofar as like sort of like the fashion ones. Like we watched What Not to Wear and all the wedding ones and stuff like that. But my mom was very anti like John and Kate +8, Sister Wives, My Strange Addiction, like any of the like sort of like what I would call freak show ones.
Yeah. Yes.
And so like, my mom was not into those. And so I had never seen it. And then I watched the first season and like part of season 5 last night because Aubrey had me watch this episode with his other family. And like, honestly, what I was mostly struck by was just like, sort of like where we left last episode of this series, as we were talking a lot about like, sort of the culture in both Mormonism and in like evangelical Christianity of like doing weaponized incompetence for your husband and like staying in these marriages with these like man failures and making all of these excuses with them. And like that was just such the poignant part of watching this show, especially like between season 1 and season 5, is that like those kids were being raised by one of the moms and like the eldest son, and like that's who was raising this like gaggle of children. And the dad, fucking Kody, number one, Kody wear some sunscreen. He always has a sunburn. Number 2, Kody wear a pair of closed-toed shoes challenge level impossible.
Yeah.
And number 3, he just like does nothing. Like he literally does nothing besides yell at the kids occasionally to be like, nah, rah! And it's like, but it's about nothing. Like he just like yells at the kids to like seem like he's being their dad.
Yeah.
And then he just like has no interest in any of the women besides Robin. And it's just such like a sad show. And I was like, I'm so happy that most of those women have left this man, because the whole time I was watching, I was like, there is just a better life out there.
They all have. Robin wants to be there. That's why I don't feel bad for Robin. Robin got exactly what she wanted, which was to have Kody all to herself. And it's like, congratulations, Robin. You got the fucking prize. It's a stupid prize, and you played stupid games to get it. What I find so addicting about Sister Wives is, first of all, Kody is the ultimate boy failure. And
oh my God,
it's just so addicting to watch the dysfunction of them, because, like, Kody fucking sucks, but in a way that is in no way violent or aggressive. Like, there's no, like, it is a very kind of safe show to watch, because there's no physical abuse, there's no emotional abuse. Like, he just is fucking there and sucks ass. And all of these women are like, Kody, will you do something? And he's like, best I can do is absolutely nothing. And it makes their drama very fun for me, because it's just watching a guy who sucks and these women who are pissed at him, and eventually they will wise up and leave.
That's like the whole thing I think of that episode that you had me watch, Aubrey, with the other family, is it's like the other guy is like very intense, and I'm like, I don't know that I trust this man, but like just the other women you can see are just like yearning for this guy, because he like is the one who like organized the car. He like decided which kids were going to go in what vehicles they were like driving to this vacation. He like assigns all the kids to rooms when they get to the beach house they're staying in. And they're like, yeah, it's crazy how he just like makes decisions and everyone listens to him, and it's not just like chaotic all the time. And it just was like, they were so yearning for any sort of like structure in their family. And like this man, Kody, is supposed to be the center of their family. And he like is, in the way that he's like allowed to just be a perpetual 12-year-old, but he doesn't take on any of the responsibility of being the figure that is supposed to be the center of the home. He only takes on the fun parts.
Well, right. It's like the whole thing with like like guys who want a trad wife, but then like they don't want to be a trad husband, right? And it's like, all right, well, if you want a woman who's going to stay home and cook and clean and raise your fucking kids for you, it's like, yeah, she's not a like a user or a player if she's expecting you to be working full time and to be bringing home the money. Like, that's the deal.
Yeah. I have a question actually about the show. Are all of the women, did they grow up also in Apostolic United Brethren, or are there any of them converts, or?
Robin is. The original 3 wives all grew up in the church.
No. Janelle did not. Janelle was a mainstream Mormon who,
yes.
Yeah. So it's Janelle was a mainstream Mormon who, sorry, I literally watched this last night.
Janelle was a mainstream Mormon who, she was married to Mary, the first wife's brother, and then she met Mary and Kody through her husband, and then Kody kind of finessed Janelle into being his second wife, and then Christine is kind of like royalty in that church community, because I think her grandfather was like a bishop or like a founder in the church.
Yeah.
And so Kody wanted her for like the prestige factor. And then Robin is like, was not even Mormon, I think. And then
no, she was Mormon. She was
Mormon. Okay.
Her previous husband and her were in the church. They were just not in a plural marriage. They just never like found a second wife. But no, because her previous
so she was apostolic, or she was regular LDS?
She was apostolic. Because her previous husband is the cousin of one of the other, of I think Mary.
Like, no, he's Christine's first cousin.
Christine's first cousin. Yeah. So it's like they refer to it as the family wreath, because like all of the women have some like familial connection to each other. And it's really strange.
Yeah.
It's always really interesting to me, and like kind of the sign of when I think something about Mormons is like not well written or researched. When like the reasons for being Mormon or being a polygamist kind of just like don't make a lot of sense. And it's always really impressive to me, especially because my mom is a convert. And so like I know why she was, you know, drawn to the church. And it's usually when people are drawn, it's because they kind of come from like a difficult family situation. And, you know, the church promises like this eternal family. And that's something I think that Big Love actually, I know you guys haven't seen it, but it does really well, is it has like a polygamist. There's like 3 women, and Bill Paxton is like ex-FLDS. He's a lost boy. Like he was kicked out of like this FLDS, and oh my gosh, what's his name is like the Warren Jeffs figure. Harry Dean Stanton is like the Warren Jeffs figure.
Oh my god.
So it's like a lot. It's a ton of David Lynch like alumni in that show. It's great.
Cool.
That's awesome.
The first 3 seasons are great. And then it kind of gets off the rails. But so yeah, he's kicked out as a teenager, and he like gets into regular Mormonism, marries a regular Mormon woman, and then she has uterine cancer. So they only have 2 kids, and then they can't have kids anymore. And that's what kind of encourages both of them to go back into polygamy, and kind of why she is a little bit more willing, even though she just grew up regular LDS, he's kind of able to, they have like a mutual religious experience that. And so then they bring in the second wife, who is Chloe Sevigny. Is that how you say her last name?
Yep.
And she's like the daughter of the Warren Jeffs, who has kind of already had a failed marriage. So she's kind of damaged goods, but is kind of given to him. And then the third is Jennifer Goodwin, who is like a woman from a really damaged home life without a father figure. And she's like his employee he owns like a home goods store. And that's what I really like about that show, and that's always what kind of like gets me a little like Under the Banner of Heaven has some like weird stuff in it where I was just like, this doesn't quite feel like right, you know?
That's the Andrew Garfield one, right?
Yes.
I think I watched the first episode of it, and then I was like, I'll come back to this later, and then never did.
It's not that good, honestly. Okay, so the writer of that show is named Dustin Lance Black. And he grew up Mormon, and he also wrote on Big Love. And his whole thing was he was like their only like Mormon writer, but he grew up in California, and like Under the Banner of Heaven gets a ton of stuff wrong. There's a ton of like little things, like even the way they pray isn't right. Like I watched a few episodes with my mom, and because Mormons always pray with arms folded, always, like the way that I grew up, like we don't do this, and they're like praying as a family, and they're doing this in the show, and my mom literally went, they didn't do their research. And it's crazy. I'm like, okay, so I don't know if this guy is supposed to be like, you know, the Mormon expert. I don't know if it's just like he like grew up and forgot, or if I don't know, maybe California Mormons are different, but anyways.
Right. Or like people thought, it would be too weird, or it wouldn't like translate to the audience or something like that.
Yeah, or they like it doesn't connect, or they won't understand that we're praying, but I don't know. They're all like, I don't know. That was the thing with my short film, is I think I kind of made it in after Under the Banner came out, because I was just like, I feel like there's not really a solid representation, and that's kind of what I am trying to do as a writer with my stuff, is like representing that culture and the culture that I grew up in. Because it's like I feel like a lot of this stuff is like, it's either like extremely LDS, like it's like either produced by the church and is totally tame and rated G and is like God is real, Joseph Smith found the plates, that is like a concrete fact, or it's like kind of the almost like exploitative, or like, isn't this weird? Isn't this crazy?
Yeah, totally.
Have you ever watched any like BYU TV shows? I always see like ads for the app on my like Amazon Fire Stick, and I'm like, why the fuck is this being recommended to me? And I'm like, oh my god, that's how they're gonna get me, because it's like I'm like, this is gonna be so stupid, right? But then I'm gonna watch it, and then I'm gonna be like, you know what? Points have been made. Points have been made.
Well, do you guys remember how big Studio C was?
Yes.
In like the 2010s? Like the BYU SNL? Like that was, they went viral several times. And what's really interesting is a lot of them have since disavowed BYU TV specifically, because they like just, when they wanted more money, they just recast them all. So like Studio C is still running, but without, I think they have like one original cast member, and a lot of them are gay.
Yeah.
Shocker.
A lot of them are gay men. Shocker. Shocking. But yeah, I was always annoyed. My parents would always want to watch BYU TV, or that would be on at my grandma's house when we went to visit. And I was just like, this stuff again? Like, God, please, can we watch? What did I want to watch? Can we watch Lost?
So I want to talk a little bit about the Book of Mormon. So the Book of Mormon is a musical that's written by Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who are the South Park guys. They are from Utah, so they are from Colorado, sorry, and they grew up around a bunch of Mormons, which is what gave them the idea for this musical that is really poking fun at a lot of Mormon stereotypes and basically saying, like, what if we make Mormon missionaries the protagonist of a raunchy comedy? So it follows Elder Price and Elder Cunningham, who are sent on their mission. And they're sent to Africa. I don't remember what country they're sent to.
Uganda.
They're sent to Uganda. And kind of hilarity ensues. People have strong feelings about the Book of Mormon, especially I think people who are involved in theater. I will say, as someone who is not as like in the know of theater, I remember when the Book of Mormon musical came out, I found it very funny. There are certain lines that are an earworm in my brain still. As I have said, in times of great stress, my brain will go, a warlord that shoots people in the face. What's so scary about that? And I just think that all the time. So I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are, because I know that some people are like, Book of Mormon, bad, should not be kind of done anymore. And then I think there's also somewhat of a case where I know there were some rewrites and things that have been changed in the script over time.
Yeah. So I saw it, I have not seen it since the rewrites happened. I saw it on tour in like 2015, and my experience of seeing it was extremely specific because I saw it on a school trip to Washington DC. And it was at, I know,
Hamilton or college?
Oh yeah, this was high school, and we fully saw it because, which is crazy because they wouldn't let us see Fun Home when we went to New York, but yet we were allowed to see Book of Mormon. Whatever.
That's insane. Something was going on at your school.
Something was going on. We saw it in part. I think part of the argument she was able to make for us to be able to see it when we went is one of the guys who was in it was someone who had directed me in community theater musicals. His name is Marcus Smith. He was in so why it was so specific for me is he was in the ensemble, and he was playing specifically the ensemble track of the guy who then plays the African Joseph Smith. And in the musical Book of Mormon, when they do the African like retelling of what they've learned from Elder Cunningham about Mormonism, is there's a lot of fucked up shit in it. And one of the things that happens is the guy who plays the African Joseph Smith wears a big black dildo. And I got to see someone who directed me in Legally Blonde the musical wearing a big black dildo. I am having a dissociative moment in the middle of the Kennedy Center. And so I had a very specific experience of watching that musical because I was watching someone I knew in it at age 17. And but I thought it was really funny. I really liked it. The one friend, I didn't see it with anyone who was Mormon, but my one friend I saw it with was extremely religious, and she was super offended by it. And so that was like a weird moment in our hotel room afterwards where she was like, I fucking hated that. And I was like, that was really funny. I think what's interesting for me is I think it's actually like, for me, through a modern lens, I actually think it has some really beautiful things to say about religion and belief and community, and is frankly less offensive to me to Mormon people, and in its original form at least is more offensive to Black and African people.
Yes.
And so it's interesting to me that the conversation for so long was about like, is this offensive to Mormons and not, is this offensive to Black people? And it is very telling to me that when they did these rewrites, that is the aspects of the show that they were largely focused on rewriting, was its depiction of African people and not its depiction of the Mormon characters.
Yeah,
and Payne, you recently though, right? Yeah.
Yes. I saw it like last year. And you know what's really crazy is I had a friend who's like a Book of Mormon super fan. Not LDS at all, grew up like here in Texas. Take me to see it, and I showed up, and my seats were directly next to someone we both know from our Gilbert Mormon days who had happened to win the lottery that night, and our seats were directly next to each other.
Oh my God.
So that was kind of crazy. And anyways, yeah, so that was kind of nice. I got to see it with someone who like grew up in the same like Gilbert like Mormon sphere. But yeah, I thought it was really funny. I had a good time. That show is choreographed within an inch of its life.
Yes.
And it's just like on, is so tight still, which is really difficult for a Broadway show. I remember when it came out, because my mom played us the first song and played us Hello. This was before, Perry did it at State. And so, because you grow up with that like verbiage, you grow up like, I never served a mission, but like the hello, my name is Elder Price, and I would like to share with you the most amazing book. Just like hearing that you were like so familiar with that language, hearing it musicalized in that way was so jarring. It was like so like, it just felt like really, it was odd. It just felt really, really odd. And I remember my sister asked my mom to turn it off. Like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. And my mom was like, okay, sounds good. Turn it off. But yeah, and then in high school, so I think I probably would have been in high school already. And then when it really picked up steam and got popular and we were listening to that song a lot because we were performing it, or I was helping, I didn't perform, but I was around that rehearsal process a lot.
Yeah.
Then you get more used to it, and then you start listening to other music. I really like to turn it off. I think I always avoided Hasadiga Evil Eye just because I knew like what it meant and like people had told me, so I never really but I would listen to Turn It Off. And then when I saw it last year, they have made some very slight edits. And I would still say, like, my takeaway from that is I think people assume it is offensive to Mormons just in the sense, basically, that it is the concept of the church is in a musical that is so explicit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like not really that is kind of almost the extent of like why Mormons don't like it. Is just because of its association of the church with stuff, and like, they stick a Book of Mormon up someone's ass. That's really like the most offensive thing that happens, basically. Yeah. The most offensive thing to the Mormon church is a Book of Mormon gets stuck up someone's ass. The musical's message is like ultimately that like, which Matt Stone and Trey Parker have always been like, having a religion is good, which is such an interesting take from them.
I know.
But they love to hammer that in. And I feel like it almost the joke becomes on like the Africans and the Ugandans. Like that is kind of who takes the brunt of it, especially in that second act. Like it's kind of mean to Mormons for about 20 minutes, and the rest of it is like jokes about, what is it? Like, AIDS, basically.
Yeah.
And so like that kind of, it's like I laughed in the moment and then kind of came away feeling like a little like, oh, that was, a bit odd. I don't know how I feel about that in retrospect. But it's hard to talk about even because like a lot of ex-Mormons love that show.
Yeah.
Love that show. Like people who've just left the church are like, I think also because it is so, they're just like, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when you bring that up with people, you're like, you feel too woke.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it's a little racist, actually. And they're like, what? And then they, it's a whole thing. But it is fun. I really wish I could have seen Andrew Rannells in it because I just think he would have destroyed. When I was saying it, the guy I was just like, it was kind of like Andrew Rannells light. And I was like, man, he would have fucking murdered. He is so talented. I love him so much. Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I think that Book of Mormon is just a really interesting piece of media in the sense that like it really brought like LDS Mormonism to the forefront of culture in a way that I don't think had really been done before. Like, I think Big Love was a popular show and it had cultural relevance, but like when Book of Mormon came out, it just seemed like this explosion. And I think it coincided with the things that you were talking about earlier, like Mitt Romney running for president and like just kind of like the Mormon church starting to be at the forefront of culture. And I think there was this decision of like, so how are we going to brand this? Like, and ultimately that's like, how do we get people to then like want to join in? And I've heard Trey Parker and Matt Stone talk about creating the musical. And like one of the things that people had told them was like, aren't you afraid that Mormons are going to like get offended or they'll like, protest or they'll like, really try to get the musical taken down? And they both just kind of like laughed about it and are like, yeah, no, you've like never met Mormons, because like the Mormon response is like, you kind of take it and laugh with everybody. And I don't know, it just reminds me of like, my entire extended family is Mormon. The attitude that I get from a lot of them is this sense of like, they love me and think that I'm interesting to talk to, but they do think that I am going to go to hell. And there's always going to be this like moral superiority in that relationship dynamic. And I just think that that's something that to me also feels like salient in a lot of these like how the Mormon church responds to like pieces of media that really depict Mormons. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yes.
And I actually, what I think is really interesting about the church's response to Book of Mormon is they kind of really initially wanted to seem like they could take a joke.
Mm-hmm.
So they took out ads in the playbill. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
Where it's
Yes.
like, you've seen the play, now read the book. They used to position missionaries outside the theater. I don't think they do that anymore. A couple people did convert. There were like news articles where like people converted to Mormonism after seeing the Book of Mormon. And then I think a really interesting, and that was also around the time where the I'm a Mormon campaign was happening. And then I think something really interesting happened when we saw kind of a leadership shift when Thomas S. Monson died and Russell M. Nelson took over, because I think Russell M. Nelson, from what I've read and understand, really dislikes Book of Mormon. Yeah. And really a lot of the changes that have been made to the church have been specifically to kind of differentiate us from the kind of the hallmarks of the religion that Book of Mormon kind of took advantage of. He's like, the not calling us Mormons anymore. Us. I always say, I don't know, I'm culturally Mormon, but not practicing. But yeah, not calling them Mormons anymore. He's like changed the missionary garb a little bit, so it's not nearly as strict. I think they're even like kind of looking into like moving the tags or like changing the tags, like not making them as iconic, which he just died. So I don't know if that'll actually happen, but that's something I heard about that they were like kind of experimenting with in certain, like they don't put Moroni on the new temples anymore, like the gold with the flute. They like have gotten rid of that. They are redoing the Provo temple, which is kind of the most, it's like really weird looking. It's featured in the credits of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives season 1.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it already needed to be remodeled, I guess, but they're removing the Moroni from it.
The fucked up thing that this reminds me of is how all McDonald's are like gray blocks now. Like
I know, it really is. It kind of is. It's kind of sad, just because when I was growing up, that was the culture. Yeah, that was it. And right. It's like, even though I think it's almost like, I don't know, I feel very melancholic and very conflicted about a lot of aspects of my childhood, because I do think it's like ultimately, like, I've chosen not to live that way as an adult. I've chosen, I won't raise my kids in that way. But it is like almost, that's like kind of why I'm like drawn to writing about it, is I'm just like, but it was a thing. And now it's kind of being almost erased a little bit. And there's like no acknowledgement that it ever existed.
It's like a weird like corporatization that I've noticed of the Mormon church. Yes. And that's like something that I am so like interested in and compelled by, is like, because it has to be, to me, like, I don't know, like an attempt to like, we don't want to be fucking weird anymore. We're not weirdos. So we're going to have everything just be kind of like bland and like take the flavor out. But we are still going to keep this like realm of secrecy and like the insular nature of the culture. And I'm like, guys, like, I don't think that this is your intent, but you sure are making it a lot more like Scientology.
Yeah. Well, I think the church has also seen a huge, especially since COVID, membership in the church has dropped like substantially. Provo used to be like 60% Mormon, and since COVID, like in less than 5 years, it's dropped to 40.
Yeah.
Like it's like a 20%. And I think some of that is because people leave the church. I think some of that is because, more people move in.
Hello, it's Mackenna from the future coming to you from an Airbnb in New Jersey. Peyton looked up this fact after the fact, and those percentages she named, all of Utah is now only 40% Mormon. So that's what the actual fact is. Back to us from the past.
But like it is like a dramatic shift in church membership. So I think that the leaders are really kind of scrambling to figure out what would get people to church, what would get young people to stay. And I mean, I think some of it, I think they're like trad wives.
Yeah.
Trad wives.
That's why my conspiracy theory is that their next pivot is going to be like, I don't think ever truly openly accepting of queer people, but I think giving a little bit of leeway to queer people within the church, because I feel like that is like the thing that would actually like keep a lot of people who are pretty locked in from converting. Because I've just known so many Mormons who are like, I actually like love being Mormon, but like I am queer, and that is what is incredibly unsettling for me for being in this environment. So I don't know. I just feel like if the church leadership is like really listening to the reasons why, at least in my experience, I've seen a lot of people convert. I just feel like the smartest pivot for them is to say, hey guys, remember when we changed our mind about Black people? We now are changing our mind about queer people, and then, seeing if that increases membership or at least retention of members.
Yeah, I think that is probably like the main reason that I hear of a lot of people leaving is either because they are gay or because they're hashtag ally. and they're like, I can't, my inner sense of what is right and wrong does not match up with my church, which is, supposed to be the ultimate. And, a lot of people get into like the meat and potatoes of what the temple stuff is, and that's because that was also an instigator in me leaving, is kind of finding, I never went through, but like kind of finding out what was going on and being like, actually this like does not kind of mesh with what I know to be right and wrong, just kind of intrinsically. And it's, yeah, I think women have been gunning for the priesthood for a long time. That's another reason a lot of people, but the thing is with the gay stuff and with the gay stuff and the woman stuff is it kind of, like, I don't think they would ever allow gay people to get married in the temple. I don't think that's ever going to happen, just because it doesn't mesh with the whole idea behind the religion, which is other than the thing that makes Mormons different from like regular Christians is that they have a belief in this eternal family, in this kind of like collab, like everyone is going to get married in the temple, have their stuff done on earth. And then when you're in your afterlife, then you get your own planet and you replenish. And it's kind of like an ever lasting cycle of the Mormon afterlife, and that really doesn't, and also that's why you're supposed to have multiple wives so you can replenish your planet. And it's like that doesn't mesh with women having the priesthood, that doesn't mesh with guys kissing. And it'd be interesting because I think there's some leadership that is like more like we need to get people back, we need to be open, and there's a lot of leadership, especially because they are so old, they are so set in their ways, they're like, well, you guys are wrong, you can't, you're wrong. And they would rather, live and die on that. So it's going to be an interesting, there's some some of people up high are a little bit more liberal than others. The guy that is just in is like really conservative. So I don't think we're going to see any of those changes. Probably for a few more rounds of prophets.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about Dancing with the Stars, which I really didn't know had the Mormon pipeline that it has until Mackenna pointed it out in the last episode. So this might be a little bit more brief, but my basic understanding, so is it the Huff siblings?
It's a bunch of them.
Okay.
There's so many.
Okay.
So do you want me to just give you like the basic rundown of it? Because I have the lore.
Give me the lore.
Okay, so basically there's a big studio in Utah called Center Stage that like a lot of pros on Dancing with the Stars get cast out of. And so because of that, there are a bunch of pros that all come from this same studio in Utah called Center Stage. And it's I think it's Riley, Lindsay, Ezra, Jenna, Brandon, and the Huff siblings all are either still in the church or were at least raised in the church. And it all really comes out of this studio in Utah called Center Stage, which is a like top dance studio, specifically ballroom studio in Utah. And what that has meant is that a lot of these people on Dancing with the Stars, who are the pros, are Mormon. And I think that like, and frankly, this really does connect to Secret Lives of Mormon Wives in a lot of ways because, they're visibly dancing on this show and like their skimpy little ballroom outfits would just not always gel with our like trad idea of what a Mormon is. And so I think that a lot of people finding out that so many of these, especially young women like Riley and Lindsay and Whitney, and are Mormon has really, I think Whitney's one of them. And if I'm not Whitney, I'm so sorry that I lied about you. No, Whitney is. Whitney's definitely one of them. I think it's Lindsay, Riley, Whitney, and Brandon are the ones who are still in the church. And then there's a few more that were out who have left the church. And like, I think seeing them do this like sexy shit on TV has shifted the way that a lot of people have like viewed Mormons, basically.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, might be homophobic of me, Mackenna might have to cut this. Heard Derek Huff talk and I was like, that is not a straight man. And then he said something where he mentioned his wife, and Josh, my husband, and I both went, what? His what?
That's so funny because I don't feel that way about Derek Huff at all.
No, that is a homosexual. If I on God, he has thought about it. He might have explored someone's body. I don't believe for a second.
Yes, he is married.
I could see him being bi and never having explored, because there's a certain kind of bisexual Mormon boy who has but they suppress that side of themselves. Like, they're able to be straight, so they are, and it turns them into the most conniving little little imp of a man.
Yes.
And
yes. Frankly, that's Brendan Urie of Panic at the Disco.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is 100%. Brendan Urie. Brendan Urie, is he bisexual? Is he announced
he's
bisexual?
Pansexual.
Oh, he's announced pan. I was gonna say also David Archuleta, but he's full, he's full gay. He's full gay.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. So, I mean, to take Derek Huff also, him and his wife met doing Dancing with the Stars because she is a troupe dancer on Dancing with the Stars. So while there's a fair amount of pros, so there's the pros on Dancing with the Stars who are the ones who get paired with the celebrities, and then there's the troupe, which is the people you'll see dancing in the big group numbers. And the troupe on Dancing with the Stars especially is pulled out of Center Stage and a few other big studios in Utah. And so so many of the people who you see are kind of the backup dancers on Dancing with the Stars are all Mormon, and that's how Derek Huff and his wife met. She is a member of the troupe.
I see. Yeah, it's really crazy how big of an artistic, because I just felt like Arizona doesn't really. I mean, we know each other through community theater, right? But I feel like Utah in general has a much more. It's much more welcoming towards the arts in general. Yeah. I feel like they have a huge dance scene. They have a huge community theater scene. They have a huge they have a semi-professional theater scene. They have David Archuleta. Did he grow up in Utah? I don't remember.
I think so.
I think so. But and we don't really we had our community theater in Arizona, and then it kind of felt we didn't have that much of a outreach.
Yeah, it's been really interesting thinking about how Arizona Mormons are characterized. So my extended family who are Mormon are all from Northern California, and so I will say that for them they are kind of fascinating Mormons because for the most part they all kind of identify as liberal, and I have one relative in particular who I'm thinking of who really does brand herself as this feminist and wants to have all of these values that I personally feel are kind of contradictory to the religious beliefs, but that's kind of just the cognitive dissonance that they live in. And I've heard kind of mixed things as to whether Utah Mormons are more or less conservative, but really looking back on it retrospectively, I kind of feel like Arizona Mormons might just be especially conservative.
Yeah, I feel like there's almost, which is interesting because, Arizona turned blue in 2020 and Utah is very firmly red. But I feel like Arizona Mormons in particular have almost they're almost Hicks.
Yeah, they are.
They're really, and especially because my dad, so my ancestors were actually sent by Brigham Young to help colonize Arizona.
Wow.
I'm a Flake. My family's Snowflake, Arizona, which is where the second temple in Arizona was built, was in Snowflake, really small town. And a lot of my family, they are ranchers. They love to be cowboys. The ones who are not, my dad grew up, on a cattle ranch. But his family, even the ones who didn't grow up on the cattle ranch, they like to cosplay. They like to wear their cowboy boots and stomp around at the rodeo. And a lot of Arizona Mormons are like that. And I feel like Utah Mormons, they have a little bit of rodeo culture, but they definitely, I think maybe it's even just the access to BYU, honestly, to BYU Provo, which is a shockingly, I think, good school. I feel like almost everyone I know who actually went to BYU kind of left, most of them, not all, but a lot have left the church because they got such a good education at BYU.
And they were great, got my free education, bye.
Yes, yeah, they pay nothing for it. And I know a lot of people who took sexuality classes at BYU and it completely changed their lives. And they left the church with their husbands. And, it's a very interesting. So I think you have a lot more access to the arts up there and just education, and there's really not that center in Arizona.
Yeah. Well, that's what's fascinating. So I'm a developmental psychologist, and I went to school with a lot of people who were Mormon who ended up becoming faculty at BYU. And I said this in the last episode, a lot of the women who I knew who are now faculty at BYU all are like these like self-proclaimed like feminists. Like they really like have like good politics and good views, especially in the realm of like researching like children and gender and sexuality and everything like that. And I'm like, this is so interesting. This is so interesting that you are going to BYU and you're going to be kind of espousing this to your students. And I'm like, what is like the cycle that's being created?
Yeah, they have a lot of really interesting, I think, faculty at that school. Honestly, in retrospect, I did not apply to any schools in Utah because I was like, I want to get as far away from the Mormonism of it all as possible. So I ended up at Arizona State. And in retrospect, I wish I would have, I think I would have had a nice experience if I went to like Utah Valley or something like that. Or like,
what is the school that the Utah Shakespeare Festival takes place at?
Oh.
Where was this going? No, because me and Aubrey, that was Utah Valley. Me and Aubrey, when we were in high school, went to the Utah Shakespeare Festival.
Yeah, I went to that too.
Yeah, and it was like such a great experience. It was like, and like Cedar City is beautiful, and I think it made me, and I took a bunch of dance classes while I was there too because I was a dancer at the time, and it made me be like, oh, I want to go to Southern Utah University, and then my mom was like, no, you don't, because you're not Mormon. And I was like, what?
Yeah. No, they also, a lot of those Utah schools have really strong ex-Mormon communities. We actually did a screening of Missionary in Utah when I was in the edit. My friend, like, who went to UVU set it up, and we invited a bunch of, like, it was like an underground screening. We invited a bunch of BYU kids who were, like, not quite adhering, and we had, like, alcohol, and I took a bunch of photos, and I had to like blur out
oh my god
the White Claws because they would get in trouble if they were in photos with like White Claws.
That's crazy.
And that was a whole thing. It was really fun. It was a really great screening. Wait, when you guys went to Utah Shakespeare, did you guys see Matthew Gray Gubler? Was he there?
No, I don't think so. We saw him.
We went 2 years in a row, and we saw Matthew Gray Gubler both years.
Oh my god. He's a fan.
Just like there. He was just like seeing with his family. And everyone would like freak out. They were like, oh my god, it's Matthew Gray Gubler. And I had not watched Criminal Minds. So I was just wondering if that was an experience you guys had as well.
No, but I was obsessed with him, so I would remember that if I had seen him.
There was a girl who was like crying. She was like, he touched me.
I think I still have his birthday in my cell phone. Like it says like Matthew Gray Gubler's birthday as like a day in my phone because I set it that way when I was like 14 and got my first iPhone.
That's beautiful. I think that's really special.
Running into him at the Utah Shakespeare Festival is going to be the beginning of my fan fiction where I'm sold to him.
Wait. That's great. That's really good.
That's really good. All right, Aubrey, let's talk about Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
Yeah, we'll wrap up with this. Basically, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is a reality TV show that is very housewife style drama. Essentially, there was this TikTok drama with these Mormon mom influencers. There was infidelity and there was shit talking. And so Hulu said, fuck it, let's give them a show. And they did. Mackenna has seen the show and has enjoyed it. I tried watching it and I really couldn't lock in. I was hoping that it would be more of a like history of the drama, and instead it was like,
no, it's assuming you know the drama.
Yeah.
So I think the reason I liked it so much is because I was watching it with a bunch of friends who also grew up in Arizona. Like I mentioned Jessie Jo in the last episode, like who went to Mountain View, which was a largely Mormon high school. She was one of the few like non-Mormon kids at Mountain View, and so I was watching it with friends, which I think really made like the experience really enjoyable. But yeah, so basically the show is predicated on like this group of moms who were called Mom Talk, and one of them, Taylor Frankie Paul, is like, we were soft swinging, and then all the other moms were like, no, we weren't. But that was like the drama and the fallout. And I think what's really difficult about and why I kind of stopped watching the show is seeing all of these women's relationship with their boyfriends and their husbands, because save, I would say 1 to 2 of them, they're all in just like kind of shitty relationships. Most of all, Taylor Frankie Paul, who is sort of now infamously in this like horrible relationship with this man named Dakota. Taylor was supposed to be the Bachelorette. They filmed her entire season and then never aired it because of this domestic violence incident with her and Dakota. It was also revealed on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives that she like spent the night with Dakota the night before she went on The Bachelorette, which really pissed off ABC. And so, but like, she's not the only one. Like, one of the other girls, Michaela Matthews, like got married when she was 16 to a guy who was 7 years older than her. And they had like 3 kids before she was 20. And there's another girl whose boyfriend is like a real, just like trad asshole piece of shit. And so it just like, I got really just devastated watching it because I was just so sad watching all of these women be in these relationships with these like horrible men who I did not feel deserved to be treated the way that they were being treated. And so I had to eventually stop watching it because it was just literally making me so fucking sad.
Yeah, and then I've heard interesting things about, like, are the women who are on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives even really Mormon? Because they do so many things that are, like, not in accordance with, like, Mormon doctrine. Like, some of them drink.
Yes, so I think that's a really interesting thing on the show, that it is portrayed as, like, the range of like sort of like how quote unquote Mormon they all are. So for example, Jen, who is married to Zach, who I think is one of the worst men, like she does not drink. She is, I would say, probably the most adherent one. There's like a whole thing where like other girls are drinking in front of her and she's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? I would say like her and Macy Neely and Michaela Matthews are probably the most like actually Mormon, like the
Michaela's
most adherent.
not.
Oh, she's not.
Michaela left when she was 16. She's like firmly out, but I think she like looks, because they separate them into like the saints and the sinners, and I think Michaela gets put as a saint sometimes, but she is like said, because I actually I used to have a Substack that has since been deleted, and I did a whole like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives thing. So I've done a lot of research.
Yeah, no,
but she's been out. She has family issues, but she like very much looks and has like, you know, the 3 kids before 20, is like married to someone who she's, you know, probably groomed her, but is sticking with him. So she really has like a lot of hallmarks of the religion, but does not take her kids to church. Anyways, sorry.
That's so fascinating. No, because just from seeing the show, I think she does get portrayed as like one of the more Mormon ones, and they kind of like don't touch on that in the show very much, I feel like.
Yeah, I think a lot of them actually, I think most of them consider themselves to have left the church, but they all grew up, they all have like, and so I think like on the producing angle, they try to like even it out when they portray them to be like a 50-50. And I think it's really like I think Macy is still a member, but is like kind of sporadic. Like sometimes she'll drink, sometimes she won't. Taylor, I think, still identifies as Mormon, but is like, you know, really like she's, you know, the infamous soft swinger. She kind of bounces around. I think right now she's in her religious era because she's, you know, losing custody of her children. And so it's like, I am praying and going to therapy. And it's like, okay, I hope that works. And then, Whitney is very Mormon.
Yes, Whitney's very Mormon.
Whitney is very Mormon. And who else did you say? Jen. Jen is very Mormon, but I think, I don't know. It's an interesting, sorry, keep talking. You've got your...
Please do. No. And then, because then there's one girl too who is a convert, Layla, who converted to Mormonism. She's also the only person of color on the show. And she's interesting.
Where Layla went to high school?
Where did Layla go to high school?
ALA Queen Creek.
Oh my God, really?
She went to my ward for a little bit when she was converting.
That's crazy. Anyways. Well, and she's a perfect example of someone who joined the Mormon church because of her like messy home life and like was looking for that like family aspect. And she's really fascinating because then also she like has come out as bisexual since then and like has a girlfriend now.
Yeah, that was so fast. I was like, wait, what am I doing wrong?
I know.
She moved famous so quick.
Yeah.
Oh
so it's a really interesting show because I do think like Aubrey, to your point, and to like, you know, what we're talking about with a lot of these women like considering themselves having left the church, like it is a show about a bunch of people who I think are like literally what Peyton said, like culturally Mormon, but are not, like many of them are not like adherents to the faith.
Yeah. No, I think that this, I've been really interested in just like the idea of how are Mormons depicted in the mainstream. And I think it's very interesting that I think the conversation has become about Mormon women specifically, whereas Mormon men just kind of get to kind of just meander. But I think that that goes down to some of the like sexism of all of it, right? Is like it's the responsibility of women to be the ones who are representative of the religion and upholding those values. And like, you know, Peyton was saying earlier, like kind of like keeping the men on the path. And that's a lot of pressure for anybody, especially like a like 17-year-old girl. And I think it's really interesting that like, you know, there does just seem to be this push away from that as like some women are becoming more educated. But then I also think there's the reverberation through like the like trad wife thing of like women who are like, oh no, like this is actually what I want. And the thing that always pisses me off the most is when that gets like branded as feminism, of like, no, I'm a feminist because I'm choosing to be a trad wife. And it's like, no, you're not. Like a woman making a choice doesn't make it feminist. You're a fucking idiot. But whatever.
Something I think is really interesting about that show is they're always talking about the patriarchy.
Yes.
And they're always like, we're doing, Mom Talk is fighting the patriarchy, but I don't think they ever describe themselves as feminist.
I agree.
Because feminism is considered like a bad word, you know, in LDS culture, and at BYU specifically. I don't know if it is that way now, but it definitely was in the 2010s. You know, very recently, it was like a bad word to be a feminist. And I think something that's really interesting about that show and kind of the dynamic, and I watched 2 seasons and then I stopped watching because I felt like it was getting way too oriented around social media and like the sponsorship of it all, and that was really boring to me. And the thing that really kind of brought me into the show is the dynamics the girls have with their husbands, because, you know, they're in these very traditional gender role relationships, very patriarchal, but because of the social media, suddenly the women are the breadwinners. You know, suddenly the men are either their assistants or, you know, they're working basically to give them something to do, or they're not working at all. Like, it makes more sense. And that's like the huge conflict with Jen and Zach in that first season. And he's like, he's so, and he looks like my like really bad. I dated a guy in college who had that blonde of hair, and he was also ex-Mormon. So I was like, I'm triggered. Yeah, I think that's really their conflict, and why he's like acting out basically against his wife, and he's like at a casino gambling her money and is so angry with her. I don't know, did you see this? Have you been told about this like plotline in the first season? The girls go to Chippendales and Jen freaks out because like she's like, my husband will be so mad at me. She doesn't see the show. She like leaves immediately with another girl, and then she tells her husband, she's like, the girls took me to Chippendales but I didn't see it. And he like tells her he doesn't love her anymore, that he's embarrassed of her, that she's a bad mom to their kids. Like, again, she didn't even see the show. She's in tears. He's like telling her that he wants to leave her. And he's meanwhile at the casino gambling her money, and she's about to pay for him to go to medical school, quote unquote. But yeah, he's just so threatened. And he does get a little bit better in like the other seasons. They go to therapy, they stay together. I guess they just got pregnant again, which is awesome.
me when I get you, Zach.
Me when I get pregnant. Just kidding.
Because my whole thing is like, yes, I think they get a little bit better, but like my whole issue is I think because the other person who leaves is Michaela, and like they don't really touch on the conversation she has with her husband who's 7 years older than her. They just sort of like let it be known that they got into a fight, but they don't really like focus on it at all. And I feel like that Zach and Jen learned a little bit from that, and we're like, we need to not be so open with our issues on this show, because it's clear that Michaela and Bryson or whatever are like having issues, but like they just don't talk about them on the show, which I think Jen and Zach maybe learned from a little bit.
I think it's such an interesting give and take between what they put on camera, because obviously there is a lot of competitiveness between the women of like who brings the most to the show.
Yeah.
And like who, like, because like exposing yourself and exposing your marriage on camera is what like gives you more popularity. It gives you more like room for like being the star this season, or like, you know how they do it on Housewives where it's like, oh, you get the center snowflake or whatever,
right?
And they're like trying to, so I think Jen, and also like Housewives, I think a lot of women go on these reality TV shows who are in bad marriages in order to like either make their spouse see how horrible they're being, or because in like subconsciously they like want their marriage to end. But I don't think, other than like Jesse's marriage has ended, has Michaela's marriage ended? Or they might be back together. I know they separated. Yeah. So I think, and a lot of these women, I think, feel a lot of pressure to keep that together, probably especially because it's on camera, unlike the Housewives who like are, you know, happy to divorce usually.
Divorce all the time, in fact.
But yeah, it's a really interesting, especially those first 2 seasons. I thought that was like a really interesting. And now it's just like, why are we pulling in, you know, like other reality shows? Or,
yeah,
like,
when Demi like goes
now?
to Vanderpump Villa, I'm like, I don't care. I literally could not care less.
I don't care. And I'm like, I don't mind Lisa Vanderpump, but I was just like, this isn't the intrigue of the show. It's so crazy, like, to, you know, a small side, it's so crazy the international appeal of Mormon wives. I was just in Finland. I went and did like a little 2-week trip to like Sweden and did like a night in Finland and was doing karaoke and made some Finnish friends. And I always ask when I make an international friend and they've never been to the US, I'm always like, where in the US would you go? Because you usually get interesting answers. Sometimes people are like New York, and sometimes people are like Texas because I want to see a cowboy. And these women were like Utah, and I was like, what? They were like, and they said, we want a dirty soda, like The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. They wanted to go to Swig. Out of anywhere in the United States, they wanted to go to Swig. I was like, that is so
crazy.
Nuts. And it's like English is not their first language. And they're still watching.
And they're locked into Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
And they're locked in. They want Swig. They want that dirty Dr. Pepper.
Oh, it's really good.
My Finnish babies. I'll take you to Crumble. We'll go to Swig.
So delicious.
So delicious.
Oh my God, so delicious. So important.
Waffle Love, famous food truck.
Oh my God, yeah, Waffle Love.
That's OG.
Cafe Rio. I love Cafe Rio. I guess they got bought out by private equity and they're not as good anymore, but I really miss them.
Yeah, OG Cafe Rio was that shit hit.
That tortilla.
Aubrey, before we wrap up, I do want to ask you, because the original, so like we have a document with like questions that we have, and this was one of our like first things in the spreadsheet, and Aubrey's original question for this episode was, why are Mormons hot? And Aubrey, do you feel like after 2 episodes, do you feel like you've come to a conclusion? We have not talked about Mitt Romney enough for the fact that like that was part of our original genesis for this. This episode was like,
we will probably have our own episode about Mitt Romney when we talk about the appeal of a conservative man sometime.
Okay.
So I think that my answer to why are Mormons hot has several kind of sub answers. I think first of all, Mormon culture places a lot of emphasis on appearance, right? Like, I mean, even when we talked about the foundations of Mormonism, there are like things like steeped within the foundation of Mormonism about being like well-groomed and healthy and like having a polish. And I think that in particular, like Utah has a really strong beauty and wellness culture that has reverberated out, I think, through the rest of like the church. And I mean, I also think there is a little bit of like, you know, famous people in general are attractive. So when we think of famous Mormons, they are very attractive. I also think just like the like Southwest ASU effect of it all, where like, you know, you've got like people walking around. Like, I've noticed I'm moving from Arizona to Kentucky. Like, I feel like when my mom comes and visits me, she's like, wow, you are like really frumpy now. And it's just because out here in Kentucky, sometimes you just don't give as much of a shit. And there is something so freeing in that. I love the Midwest. Thank you, at God. But I think that like my big answer is that it is not necessarily exclusive to Mormons as much as like kind of like Southwest and like West Coast appearance standards. But I also think there is something exclusive to Mormons about the like clean cut, the kind of like finesse and like wanting to present that version of yourself, especially when you are younger and like looking for a spouse.
Totally. Yeah. It's a really interesting thing. And I know we touched on this a little bit last time, Aubrey, but I just feel like it's so funny because like all the Mormon boys I grew up with, I was like, stay away from me. But so many girls I grew up with were Mormon. I was like, but you're so pretty. Be gay for me, please. And now so many of them are. And so I do feel like I've won. I won, but they're not gay for me. I'm still single, but they're gay now, so I still feel like I won.
I feel so similarly about the Mormon boys and the Mormon girls. I think also like Mormon women, and this is also women in the Southwest in general, are very outdoorsy. And like I am not outdoorsy, but I'm like I would aspire. I like kind of almost want to aspire to be outdoorsy.
Yeah.
And so they'd be like they're hiking every weekend. They're doing like they're like, we're just gonna go do the Grand Canyon this weekend. You're just like, wow, you're so strong.
Yeah.
And it's like blonde, but like not blonde and like it's interesting because like the Mormon wives, like that is not the Mormon woman that I think is like so beautiful. It's very much like a girl who just like shows up at church and she's wearing very little makeup and she's got, you know, huge biceps. You know. Like, and yeah, it's plagued me my whole life. But
yeah, I feel like that's a really interesting thing, going from like, you know, if we think of like Sister Wives and Secret Lives of Mormon Wives as like two like ends of a spectrum. I think Sister Wives is so interesting because it's this portrayal of like, oh, these like weird freaky Mormons who are in a polygamous relationship, and they're all sort of like regular looking people. And then now we have this very popular, you know, Mormon show of these like hot Scottsdale girls. Like, I know they're all from Utah, but they're all just like hot. They're like girls who you would see out in Old Town Scottsdale. They all have the same hair extensions. Their hair is all the same length with the same big bouncy, like Mormon curls, like extension ass curls. They all have eyelash extensions. And it's like this, like sort of, it's interesting to look at those two shows sort of side by side and see the way that like we've been like, yeah, but what if Mormons were sexy girls sometimes? And it's very interesting how that cultural understanding has sort of like shifted because of these two television shows in many ways. But yeah, no, Peyton, I totally agree where I'm like, okay, that's a hot Scottsdale girl. That's not my hot Mormon girl.
You know what's so funny is the last time I was in Scottsdale, I was at a restaurant and the waitstaff was like, Dad Talk was just here. Like, they were like, you just missed Dad Talk.
You missed Dakota, and it's like, I don't give a shit.
You missed Dakota.
The only one of those men I would want to see in real life is Demi's hot older man husband.
He's also, something is not quite, he's known her since she was a kid too.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's probably evil too, but he's just sexy, so I'd be okay with seeing him in real life.
he used to be married to one of the friends of on Real Housewives of Salt Lake City too,
oh my God.
Which is like how those two shows
converge,
intertwine. That's
the
also
family,
really
the
good.
Family wreath of reality TV.
Do either of you guys watch Salt Lake?
I have not seen a single episode of any Real Housewives shows.
Real Housewives, it is so. That's the one to start with. That was like my very first. That was like baby's first reality show for me. And it. Anyways, the next season is going to be really good because 3 of those women just broke up with their husbands like all at once, like in this break.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I'm so excited.
Well, Aubrey, any final thoughts on any of this?
No, I mean, I'm really interested to see how like the Mormon cultural zeitgeist continues to develop and shift over time. I'm really curious about how the church will continue to rebrand itself, especially as membership decreases. And I feel like it's kind of 2 paths. One is a like waning phase where you just kind of like stick to your traditional guns and then let membership diminish but have a stronger base, or you try to branch out and see who you can get onto to join in who might not have previously. And it'll be very interesting to see what direction they decide to go in and, you know, what pops up in pop culture from that.
Absolutely. Well, and I just want to thank Peyton one more time for coming on the show today. Peyton, if the people are looking for you on the internet, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram at Peyton Flake.
Amazing.
That's about it.
Wow. Okay. I was trying to think of a good closing question. And I guess my closing question is, what celebrity who is not known to be Mormon do you feel like is the most Mormon coded person and you're kind of shocked they're not Mormon?
Oh, someone who's not Mormon.
Someone who's not Mormon.
Someone who's not Mormon. I was originally going to say Ryan Gosling, but he grew up Mormon.
He grew up Mormon,
so that doesn't count. Oh my gosh. Who's really, really popular? Who is not LDS? Oh my gosh. Wait, here. So I like need to look at my letterbox really fast. If there's anyone who's very Mormon coded.
I still think to me, Diana Agron is so Mormon coded and she's actually Jewish. And I think that's crazy style.
I know she is. She is famously Jewish. Oh my gosh. I'm like, who? I've never thought about this before.
I feel like Ryan Seacrest gives vibes.
Ryan Seacrest gives Mormon vibes?
Yeah. Like if somebody was like, oh, Ryan Seacrest actually has like a wife and like 7 kids, I'd be like, whoa, but I wouldn't be that surprised.
Well, that's funny because he dated Julianne Hough, and said that and Ryan Seacrest is apparently the one who introduced Julianne Hough to like the concept of wine.
Wow. he was gonna break bad.
Yep.
Okay, I have an answer. It's Blake Lively.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Honestly, like, you could tell me that her and Ryan Reynolds are like a Mormon couple, and I'd be like, sure.
1000%. And also just like his brand of comedy is so popular within like the Mormon sphere. Not the Deadpool of it all, but like the like the dry witticism.
It's because
like,
all
I'm a
boys
gentleman
want
and
to
a
fuck
scholar.
Ryan Reynolds. All boys want to have sex with Ryan Reynolds, and I don't know why, but that's for a different episode.
Do you guys remember, have you ever heard of VidAngel?
Mm-mm.
Do you guys remember that when that was a huge thing? It was like, it was a software that you could download to your TV.
Oh, yes. I had friends who had this.
It would censor movies, and it could censor movies on streaming services. So if you had like a Netflix account, it could like kind of override you could watch any movie that you had on Netflix on VidAngel, and you could change also like the tolerance. So like you could have it be so that you didn't get any swear words at all, like no damn, no hell. You could change it so it could just, it censored the fucks, nudity. It could remove all kissing scenes. Like it let you do this with basically any movie you had on your streaming service. And they got the shit suit out of them because all the streaming service, Disney, like Lionsgate, everybody sued them all at once. And it's like, you can't do this. You can't censor our videos. And they were super duper, I think they're a Mormon company, and they were super duper popular with Mormons. And so they repivoted to making their own content, and now they are Angel Studios.
Oh.
Who makes all of like the, oh my gosh, they just did that Animal Farm. That animated Animal Farm. And now they're huge. They're making a ton of money doing that.
God.
But anyways, I feel like every Mormon man has watched Deadpool versus Wolverine, or at least would have, because I don't think they're able to do those censoring services anymore. But like every Mormon man would love to watch Deadpool versus Wolverine on VidAngel. And that would make them so happy.
Wow. I was going to say, I want to see a version of Deadpool versus Wolverine where everything is just changed to Freck.
Have a question or a topic that you would like for us to discuss? Send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com.